Yeah.
What's good? It's your boy JayThat'sMe. We're going to get into TNA Under Siege from May the 22nd, 2025. A very lackluster show. TNA really didn't try here, if we're being honest. They could have done better. And there really wasn't much to talk about on this show as well. It was just a really weak show to put on in Canada. So, whatever. I don't expect for things to kind of change for TNA until after Against All Odds is over and done with, and that is going to be in June, early June, June 7th. So, in basically like 2 weeks. So after Against All Odds is over with, then TNA should pick up because we're going to go into Slammiversary. So the road to that should be kind of fun. But again, this really was a lackluster show. There were a couple of things that I liked, but for the most part, this was really missable. So let's get into the pre-show first, and then we will get into the main card. The pre-show started off with Robert Stone and Santino Marella. They just threw jabs at each other back and forth. They talked trash about each other. And then they just talked about Tessa Blanchard and Ariana Grace and how Santino Marella isn't playing. If anything out of the ordinary happens to his, happens with his daughter. Okay, so that makes sense, I guess. All right, moving on. Xia Brookside versus Rosemary. Rosemary wins via DQ. Xia just basically snaps and beats the crap out of Rosemary with the belt. So referee then basically calls for the bell. And then post-match, Xia continues to snap by whipping everyone with the belt, including a bunch of security guards, which is pretty cool. So I like this. It makes sense. It shows that Xia has a breaking point like we all do. It's very relatable. And this is interesting. It is, if we're being honest. This is okay. All right, so on to the main card. First match of the night, Mike Santana versus AJ Francis. But AJ Francis came out. It was supposed to be that. But AJ Francis came out saying, that he was injured and everything else. And saying that Casey Navarro will be taking his place. So this then leads us into Mike Santana versus Casey Navarro, which is basically the first match of the night. Mike Santana wins. Match was pretty fun. The crowd was into it. Santana is a lovable babyface. The crowd loves him. And it begs the question, will TNA end up giving him the TNA World Heavyweight Championship at some point? The answer is yes, but when? And how long would he be champion? Again, TNA right now, they are selling out most of their shows. And I was shocked, but even at this show, commentary mentioned, especially in the main event, that it was a sold-out show. So they were able to pack 5,000 people in that venue, which is kind of interesting. So Mike Santana wins via the spin the block. Towards the end of the match, Casey Navarro, he kind of basically fake collapse, and Mike Santana wasn't buying it, so he ended up doing, the power bomb. And then Casey tried to do like a little kip up, and then he automatically ate a spin the block for the 1, 2, 3. And then post match, AJ Francis attacked Mike Santana from behind with a crutch, and then he wanted Casey Navarro to join. But Casey was conflicted, and so Casey ended up giving in, and that was it. All right, this is fine here. It seems like they're going to turn Casey Navarro babyface and break up First Class, which is awesome as hell because because AJ Francis is a sorry sack of shit. He just is. He's an okay promo, but man, he does not belong in a wrestling ring. I could see him being somebody's manager and, taking a couple bumps here and there. That's fine, but inside of a wrestling ring, no. Moving on, Cody Deaner versus Eddie Edwards. I don't care about this. Eddie Edwards ends up winning. Who cares? Alicia Edwards got involved. She low-blowed Deaner, and then this allowed for Eddie to hit the Boston Knee Party. Who gives a crap? Deaner's career is over with. The system, they basically taunt Deaner, make fun of him and all that, saying that he's a failure to his family, to his home country, and everything else. So then the Northern Armory, who are supposed to be heels, they come out and they defend Deaner for whatever reason. And then this led us into an impromptu tag team match in which the Northern Armory basically win. Who cares? So they defeat the system. So who cares? All this shit was a waste of time. Why can't everybody in this match be fired? Be released, really, outside of JDC? Because I like Johnny Dango Curtis. But come on, get the fuck over yourself. I don't get TNA. Why is Eric Young still there? You're able to get rid of PCO and Rhino, but you cannot get rid of Eric Young. He sucks. Just move on from Eric Young. For real. Move on. Oh, my God. So, Deaner's basically done with TNA, basically. He'll probably end up going to NWA or MLW. That's where a lot of guys that have been released from TNA as of late, they've been going to one of the other promotions. So that's probably where he'll go. Was Deaner important? No, he wasn't. I did like Deaner when he was a heel with Violent by Design, but that was 3 years ago. Well, no, that was 2 years ago. And then he went away for a while. I really thought that he was quietly released, but who gives a shit about the system or Deaner or any of this nonsense? Moving on. This leads us into the Elegance brand, which is Ash and Heather by Elegance. They were able to defeat Spitfire, Jody Threat, and Danny Luna. And they're no longer a team. They have to disband. It was a match by Elegance. Basically, it was no rules and everything else. So basically, there was interference in this match, which was not good. And that it was done by George Iceman, the personal concierge, and Maggie Lee, who is the newest member of the Elegance brand. So, this makes it good. So this means that Spitfire's over, and it makes sense because Jody Threat, not really that good, and Danny Luna, she has some promise. Danny Luna is better off as a singles anyway. Jody Threat, I don't care too much about her. You could, kind of release her. I guess send her to AEW or wherever else she's going to go, or the Indies or whatever. But I don't see any promise for Jody Threat. I really don't. I'm not going to hold you up. But Danny Luna, to me, she has what it takes to be a champion. I could see her being knockout champion one day. I really could. I'm not going to hold you guys up with that one. But the Elegance brand winning is great. It makes perfect sense. Match was okay, too. I'm not going to hold you. Match was okay. Had a couple of funny spots in there with George Iceman throwing glitter at Jody Threat. That was kind of funny. It's a pretty good little comedy element. Moving on. This leads us into the mixed tag. The Order 4, which is Mustafa Ali, Tasha Steelz, and the Great Hands versus the Rascals and Indy Hartwell. And Raj Singh, who ended up being the guy who took Ace Austin's place. So Ace Austin was written off TNA. Basically, he's no longer in TNA. So they wrote him off just a day prior. They wrote him off. They had Ali do a vicious ankle attack on Ace Austin. So Ace Austin is no longer in TNA, which kind of makes sense. Apparently, I'm guessing they couldn't reach an agreement, and so Ace Austin just bounced out. Where do I think Ace Austin will land? Probably in NXT. I think that would make the most sense. I know people said that he should go to AEW, but not really. AEW doesn't really need any more guys. NXT kind of does. I think that Ace Austin would be great in NXT. He really would. And that begs the question, when Chris Bay is 100% healthy, will he follow Ace Austin? I mean, that's a good question to have and a good question to ask. I think he will. I think at some point they'll end up reuniting, whether it be in WWE or AEW. I really do think that Chris Bay should be in WWE, mainly NXT, because they need all the help they can get. One thing that I like about WWE over AEW is that WWE, they constantly release people, which is great. AEW, not so much. They just let their contracts expire. WWE, they do releases. So I do like that. So I do think that Ace Austin probably will end up being NXT bound, basically, for being honest. So, there's that. The match itself, it was won by Mustafa Ali. Basically, he ended up winning. Who really cares? Not really that important. And Raj Singh sucks. I thought he was quietly released, but it didn't happen, so whatever. Then this leads us into Ariana Grace versus Tessa Blanchard. Santina Marella, he was going to be in his daughter's corner. But, so Robert Stone comes out and he tells Santino without a manager's license, he can't be at ringside. So he makes him leave. Tessa Blanchard ends up destroying, Ariana Grace. She wins the match in like 30 seconds, basically. So, this was great. I mean, it didn't even last long at all. This was perfect. I knew this was going to happen. This was great. And then the crowd chanted, "She's a racist," so they're still doing that. Okay, all right, that's fine. Whatever. So then this leads us into Masha Slamovich versus Victoria Crawford, a.k.a. Alicia Fox. So then Robert Stone, he's still out there. He demands that both Ariana and Santina Marella leave, basically. And then this leads us into Masha defeating, in quick fashion, Crawford. So, match shouldn't have went that long. I think it was maybe 3 minutes. There was shenanigans involved. Basically, there was an actual rep up in the match, basically. So I don't know why. So basically, Masha hit the Requiem and she retained. So she ends up getting on the mic. She calls out Lei Ling Lee, aka Xia Li. She says that she deserves the next shot at her title. So then she comes out to accept. Robert Stone says, "Sure, that's fine, but wrestlers can't make matches for themselves." So he's just like Ava, basically. He says that Lei Ling may deserve the next title shot, but if she wants it, she'll have to win a match next week on TNA. Okay, that's fine. All right, moving on. This leads us into the Nemeth brothers. They defeat Matt Hardy and Leon Slater. I think Leon Slater ate the pin, so whatever. It's fine. So, it is what it is. I don't care about this shit. I really don't. Moving on. This leads us into the main event of the evening. Joe Hendry and Elijah, they defeat Trick Williams and Frankie Kazarian. This match went a little bit too long. This went about 20 minutes. It shouldn't have been that long. It really should have been about, at best, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 12. But it is what it is. Joe Hendry gets the win via the standing ovation. Frankie Kazarian eats the pin. Right decision was made. Post-match, Joe Hendry and Trick Williams, they just have a stare down, and that was the end of the show. I do think NXT will have Trick Williams defeat Joe Hendry. Why do I say that? Again, TNA is still trying to have sellout shows, and that's what they've been doing ever since they partnered up with NXT earlier this year. I think Trick Williams winning makes perfect sense. Again, Joe Hendry is better off being in a chase position. There's nobody that's a credible heel from TNA that I want to see Joe Hendry go up against. There's nobody outside of Nick Nemeth, but Nick Nemeth, he's tied up with his brother, feuding with the Hardys. And everybody else that's a heel on TNA, I'm not really too much of a fan of, outside of Mustafa Ali, but they're not going to revisit that either. So, and AJ Francis and all, AJ Francis, you can forget it. Eric Young, fuck that. So, Trick winning is great, and it makes really good business sense as well, if we're being honest. So, it is what it is. I just hope that NXT does pull the trigger, because Joe Hendry doesn't need to win on Sunday. He just doesn't. I think if Trick gets a run with the title, let's say Joe Hendry wants a rematch at, not against all odds, but at Slammiversary. He comes up short, so then he has to continue his redemption and everything else, and then he regains it at Bound for Glory. That would be perfect right there. So you give Trick Williams basically like close to a 5-month reign as champion. And to me, that would be pretty cool. So, I'm down for it. But what did you guys think of Under Siege? Again, the show was lackluster in my opinion. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.